Hey there, my name is Kyle Fidalgo. I'm the academic technologist here at BC Law, and today we're going to talk about system prompts. What they are, what they're for, and where do they go. So you've probably had this experience before. Every time you start a new chat with any of our AI assistants, whether that's Gemini, Claude, ChatGPT, so on and so forth, they do not remember by default any of your past conversations, anything that you've worked on before. You often have to re-explain what you're working on, who you are, what good results look like, what kind of input they should expect, what kind of output you expect, so on and so forth. A system prompt is one way to fix that. It's an opportunity to provide some level of permanence and persistence to the instructions that you provide to it, some context about who you are and who your stakeholders are that you might be creating material for or brainstorming ideas for. And so I'm going to talk at a high level about what system prompts are, some different phrases and terms that you might see that all define the same thing, where they go, and why it's useful for you. So put very simply, a system prompt, you might also hear it called system instructions or custom instructions, or maybe even project instructions. All of these things are the same idea. All it is a set of instructions in plain natural language, and it's the first thing that your AI model sees before the conversation even starts. It's behind the scenes, it's persistent, and it shapes the tone and nature of the conversation. So you've probably seen this interface before, right? It's your standard chat interface that you might see on the web. You've got your window where the conversation naturally occurs, your prompt input field, and generally you probably think that's it. Well, you might not know that every model lab, whether that's Google or Anthropic or OpenAI, they have a set of system instructions that teach the different models how to interact with their users. And we also have the ability to create custom system prompts to create things like custom assistants, like a custom GPT or a Gemini Gem, that allows us to also influence how we want these models to work with us. And so a system prompt can be very simple. Often they might look something like this. You're a helpful chat assistant who helps users with their requests. This isn't something you typically see as the end user, but it does influence the nature of your conversations. So you can imagine these tools, they have very broad world knowledge. They're very helpful. They're very generally intelligent and capable models at this point. So most of the time, just by starting a conversation, that usually gets you to where you want to go. But system prompts really help when you want that specialized help. So as an example, let's say you wanted some help with creating a presentation. Now, you might expect, help me create a presentation. This is a very vague prompt, of course, and you're going to get a very vague and generic response. Current models are also smart enough to know to ask you some follow-up questions because this is so vague. So they might actually help you walk through this process in an okay way. But generally speaking, we want to give extra context to make this more useful and impactful for the work that we want to do. So one version of a system prompt that is very simple could look like this. Your role is to help Kyle build presentations for AI fluency education. You ask clarifying questions about audience and goal of the presentation before generating any content. And now if I were to ask whether we're in Gemini or some other platform to help me with a presentation, you can expect a very different response. So one way to think about AI tools when you're creating, whether you're just having a conversation with them or you're creating a system prompt, is that they are very smart and capable, intelligent system, right? They've got all their training with their world knowledge and mostly up-to-date knowledge about current events and best practices and things like that. And really, when you're creating a system prompt, you could think about it as onboarding a new employee, a new assistant, a new colleague. So it's their first day on the job. And in order to help you most effectively, it's best if they know your context, what you find meaningful to work on, what good looks like to you, What are your preferences, right? What are your department's preferences? What are your stakeholders' preferences? So on and so forth. You can imagine that you can be very specific here and get the kind of help that you want out of these tools by being able to better articulate and communicate effectively what it is you're trying to work on. One thing you should know is that when it actually comes time to build a system prompt or write one, you're almost never writing this from scratch. Where you're starting from is with the conversation, right? This is one of the keys. This is one of our big principles of natural language is the key to working with these tools well. The best tip I have for you is when you have an idea or you want to understand how AI can help you, ask AI how it can help you achieve your goals. This is this concept of using AI as both the vehicle and the guide to get you to where you need to go. And it feels weird at first because you're working with a tool to build instructions so that the same tool can help you perform this task, achieve these goals. It's very strange. I know it sounds strange. We've never had software that you're able to do this before. You can't open up Excel and put in one of the cells like, hey, Excel, how do I use you better? That doesn't work. But AI is this very capable and intelligent thought partner, collaborator, co-creator. So use that to your advantage. I'll give you a good starting point. Here's a prompt that you could paste in, and let's use this and build something that might look like an HR assistant. I'm just going to copy and paste this, and the starting point of this is I'm considering writing a system prompt for the following purpose. Can you help by asking clarifying questions so we can develop a system prompt at an appropriate level of depth and clarity? Open up a new chat. I'm going to paste this in. And really quick off camera, I'm going to come up with that HR starting point so that I can provide it right after this initial prompt that I'm pasting in. Okay, so in the power of editing, I've come up with a concrete way to ask for some help. So help me write a system prompt for a custom Gemini gem that acts like an interview prep and hiring process specialist. I want it to help users design structured, competency-based interviews that are fair, evidence-based, and less biased. It should turn a job description into key competencies and generate behavioral and situational interview questions with some follow-up probes. It should create scoring rubrics and debrief templates. If the user is vague, it should ask clarifying questions first. Format everything clearly in professional Markdown. Markdown is a plain text format, and it's a way to provide formatting that is both easy for us to read and decipher as humans, as well as your AI tools. There's an additional document linked along with this video that covers Markdown in great detail. There's not a lot to learn, but it might be useful for you to go over because it comes in handy when working with AI tools. So again, I've used the Markdown horizontal rule to sort of note that this is a new section of my prompt. I'm just sharing some tips as I go here. And what I'm going to do is change my model to Pro because, again, I want the most advanced model talking to me, and I'm going to hit Submit. And this is exactly my workflow when I'm working with AI. I'm often either already midstream of a conversation, and I'm like, oh, wait, I'm going to reuse this workflow over and over again, or I can see this being useful for someone else. I will often say, oh, help me, let's capture our work here today. How could I write this to you in a way where we could get to this point in our conversation without us having to do so much back and forth? Or I know I'm going to have to do this again. Let's build a system prompt based off of the work we've done. And in this case, when I just have the start of an idea, same kind of thing. So just keep this in mind as you're working with AI, that this can really come and go in any part of the process. All you have to do is ask for that assistance from the tool to capture that and then build it into a system prompt moving forward. So again, Gemini, very happy to say this is a fantastic rough draft. You've already clearly defined some of the core functionality of this assistant, and now it's going to ask me some clarifying questions. So if I was really building this out, I would take my time to answer these questions. We would go back and forth, and then Gemini would be smart enough to know, oh, okay, we've clarified the goals of this particular assistant. Let me hand you this system prompt. The workflow looks a lot like this. You start with the task. Do you find yourself re-explaining who you are, who your audience is, what are the inputs and outputs? You have a conversation with an AI tool. Could be any tool. Let AI interview you, right? Like use that starter prompt to get you going. And it's going to help you to articulate the things you already know. Then, once you have that sufficient context built up in the conversation, this is when you get to say, hey, write this up as system instructions that I could put into a gem, let's say. Then from there, you just test and refine. You use it. Just know the first version may or may not work. That's commonplace for when you're collaborating with AI tools. But often, if you're able to describe the task at hand or the goal of what you're trying to accomplish in natural language, written out as maybe instructions or maybe it's more conversational, there's a good chance that you're going to be able to work well with AI to do the thing that you want to do. So as you can imagine, system prompts come in all shapes and sizes. After some back and forth, here's a system prompt that Gemini and I came up with for that HR position. I'm not going to talk through everything, but let's just look at what the high level, like the role and the goal of this system prompt is and some of the different sections that it provided. We have here, you are an expert talent acquisition consultant specializing in structured, competency-based interviewing. Your goal is to help users design rigorous, fair, and evidence-based interview processes that minimize bias and maximize the ability to predict candidate success. There is a core philosophy section that tells it to adhere to 5 non-negotiable principles of high-performance interviewing, including the structure, how we define what competency-based means, the evidence-based priorities that you follow, how to make sure we have bias reduction included in this, and then some quantifiable scoring, discussing the rubrics that it's going to use. Then it even maps out a 3-phase workflow, including the competency mapping, some question engineering, evaluation design, and then it discusses the output formats at the end. We'll provide the full system prompt so you can take a look at this and see in detail what this would include. And hey, if you're an HR professional watching this, maybe this will be useful to you. System prompts also don't have to be super long or overcomplicated. This is an example of a system prompt that I use sometimes when I just want an AI tool to really help me think deeply through a problem that I'm approaching. I use this a lot in my web development workflows, and it helps quite a bit to make sure that I'm thinking through all the different high-level thinking that I need to, all the systems level thinking. So I have one that's called Grill Me, and it is a custom assistant that interviews me relentlessly about every aspect of a plan until we reach a shared understanding, right? Building context together. We're going to walk down each branch of the design tree, resolving dependencies between decisions one by one. And this is defined by identifying the major branches. We're going to walk them one by one and don't draft until the critical choices are resolved. For each question, provide your recommended answer. And this might sound vague, but AI actually knows how to take this and run with it. These ideas are something that are built into this interview design process. So walking down a design tree, even if you don't know what that means, AI does. It's just built into its world knowledge. And so it will ask you questions, picking choices along the way, helping you really dig into the workflow or the plan or the goal that you have in mind. I'm going to read the start of one last one that I use and have shared here at BC. This is a custom assistant that I built for an AI policy development guide. It was meant for law school faculty, but could be used more broadly for creating AI policies for the classroom. Maybe it goes in your syllabus, maybe it goes in a Canvas module, maybe it's just helping you clarify your own thoughts around this as you head into a new semester. So it starts by saying you are an AI assistant specialized in drafting generative AI usage policies for academic and professional contexts within a law school environment. Your goal is to help faculty and administrators create clear, fair, and effective policies. Help your users make the implicit explicit in their policy language. And then it goes on to include a whole lot of different guidelines and guardrails and specific resources that I've supplied so that it has the best chance of performing the task at hand. So that's the main high-level thing about this, right? It's its identity. It knows who it is. It knows who it's talking to and what it's there to do. Behind that opening, like I said, there's actually multiple pages worth of instructions. There's key considerations that it should take into play, what its interaction style is, some example policies that it can use to inform its decision and how it writes policies for its users. And everything that was in this prompt was built by a conversation with AI. And it's the kind of conversation I showed you before. If you think about those examples closely at a high level, they all have similar ingredients. They're similar buckets of information that typically go into a system prompt. And they start with just a role and an identity. Who is this assistant, right? Remembering that word choices matter. Certain words have more meaning baked into them than others, as you can imagine. So this is something that you could play around with and just see how it interacts with an AI model. Then you've got the goal and the task. This is exactly what it sounds like. It's what is this for? Who is this for? Then there's this idea of context, which really is everything in the system prompt. Specifically, I think what matters most about this concept of like how much context you should share with the AI model, these are all the things that AI doesn't inherently know, right? So who are you? Who is your audience? What domain area of expertise should it be focused on? What are your preferences, input and output formats, so on and so forth? I've said a lot of these things before, and these are the kinds of things where if you have it in your head about how you want a specific task or workflow or whatever to play out, then that's a good opportunity to share a little bit of that in the system prompt. Remember, AI is already pretty smart. We don't have to explain what an HR professional does as their role, right? We don't have to like over-explain to an AI tool. But the things that we want to put in there are our specific preferences for how that task might get carried out. So the very fact that we said you're an expert talent acquisition consultant, right? Like that whole role, it sort of understands what the responsibilities and types of things that this role would typically help with. And then we get to tell it the more implicit and explicit ways that we want this particular individual, in quotes, to help us with the task. Then, generally speaking, again, these are all task dependent, but you're going to put in some expectations here and your formatting preferences. What should the tone be? If it's a conversational type of assistant, maybe a reflective dialogue kind of assistant, a process coach, something like that. Like, what are the conversational guidelines and guardrails that it needs to follow? So on and so forth. I also like to include a guardrails or gotcha section for things that I don't want the AI tool to do as part of the interaction, or maybe part of that compounding process when we learn whether or not something works for us. Then I can put that back into a gotcha section. Like, hey, we've tried these couple of things before. They don't work. Here's what worked instead. And it helps get over some of those weird qualities and failure modes that AI can sometimes fall into. One recommendation as you get started is to start simple, right? You don't have to overcomplicate this and think through all the millions of ways that you want an interaction or something to play out, or that a workflow, all the steps that it needs to follow to be successful. Because of the speed and nature of these tools, you can try things out very quick and you'll get that immediate feedback whether it works or not for you. And leaning into that iterative, experimental sort of like mindset is also a good quality to have as you're working with AI tools. So even if you just start very simply with like a single role and a goal and maybe one guardrail that you want it to follow, that's a good starting point as well. AI is going to help you figure out the rest anyway, and all you have to do is describe what you need in plain language, get it into a text input, and then refine from there. Where do these system prompts even live? In our BC Google environment, we have a Gemini Gem. In Claude, they have something called projects, and you put system instructions in the project instructions. ChatGPT has something similar too. They have projects, and they also have custom GPTs. And in any tool, like I showed before, you can simply copy and paste your own instructions as the first turn in the conversation, and the AI will just take on those instructions, right? AI is very adaptable and malleable, and you can instruct it and teach it to behave in certain ways in line in the conversation. This also applies more broadly to anywhere else you might provide instructions to AI, such as skills or writing instructions for more advanced things like sub-agents or MCP servers. All you're doing is providing instructions in natural language. So real quick, let's look at Gemini, and I'll show you where to paste the instructions for this HR specialist that we've been building here. So if I go into Gemini, and I go to the Gems section, which if your menu is collapsed, you can expand this and then click on Gems. And then you can create a new gem. I am simply going to copy and paste from a different location into this gem builder here. And another pro tip, if you are creating different custom assistants for your own use or for your team's use, it's also a helpful idea to just have this sitting in a Google Doc, because it's easier to edit and you get to see like the full version of the system prompt versus the tiny little instructions window that you see here. So we're going to give our assistant a name. We're going to call this the interview prep specialist. Helps with interview prep. Very creative here. And then we're going to copy and paste our instructions. And so the system prompt goes right into the instructions field. And you even have a preview window directly in the gem builder, so you can start testing right away. So once it loads the instructions, you can choose the model you'd like to talk to. I always recommend Pro. And you can start asking for help building out this like docket of interview materials. When you're done, you can hit save. You can even share from here. So if you wanted to share with other members of the BC community or more broadly, you can click share and do that. Or you can start chatting right away. So now, hopefully you have a broad understanding of what system prompts are, why you use them, and where they go, specifically in Gemini Gems. You also understand that you use AI to help you write the system prompt. You're almost never writing these from scratch. You're coming in with the idea, the vision, and the discernment to make sure that it's going down the right path, and then you build and iterate on the system prompt together before loading it into a gem or some other platform. So before you create a system prompt, just think, what is something that you do repeatedly? Where do you find yourself re-explaining the goal or the task or the workflow to an AI tool? That's your signal to build a system prompt. So thanks for watching this video, and good luck writing and using system prompts.